Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630. WMAL.
8:07 on the Morning Majority on this 6:30 day, June 30th, 2011.
6:30 day. I thought it would never get here. It's like Christmas. It seems like it's never going to arrive, and yet here it is today, and I'm almost certain there will be shrimp tonight.
I hope there's shrimp tonight. If there's not shrimp tonight,
I'm going to have to go order some.
I'm going to be quite disappointed if there's no shrimp.
I'm sure you'll be able to get it.
Bacon.
Yeah, we're going to be at the Hyatt Regency in Bethesda tonight, celebrating 6:30 day with many of our listeners, so we appreciate you showing up. Peter Morisi on the show tomorrow, Michael Steele, Gary Sinise tomorrow.
All right.
It's going to be a fun show. And Brett Baer, most likely, though, he's been in Iowa. But, they got phones in Iowa.
Yeah.
You can call.
He'll call unless he's on a plane somewhere.
Yeah. Lanny Davis joins us now, former Clinton White House counsel. Good guy, but someone who makes over $250,000 a year.
We're certain of that.
And I'm sure you have a corporate jet, don't you, Lanny?
I don't, but I'm asking the federal government to please raise my taxes so we can pay my children's bills.
Oh.
Is that right? Well, you can always just, write a little bit more.
You can write an extra check if you want to, Lanny. Nothing stops you from doing that.
Well, I guess I give a lot of money to the ASPCA and to Humane Society and shelters, and that's my charity, but I think everybody out there should. But I think everybody should be paying more taxes, and I'm ready to do it.
Oh,
President Clinton said, why should I get a tax break? Why should oil companies and corporate jet tax owners get a tax break while the Republicans are on vacation this week?
Why should the president be involved in class warfare is perhaps the bigger question. That's what this is.
So when the Republicans don't want to defend a proposition that it's about 80% of America, including most Republicans, it's a minority Republicans, but 80% of America say corporate tax jets don't get tax breaks. If we're going to cut spending, they ought to sacrifice.
Lanny.
And that's class warfare. Are you saying 80% of America are the class that's warring against 20%?
No, I'm saying that, excuse me, it's not my turn, but you've provoked me, and I must jump in here. What I'm saying, Lanny, is okay, let's do away with the corporate break for corporate jets, okay? And that will generate a whole $3 billion. Let's get serious about getting the things that will really fix the economic problem here, and quit piddling around the edges and picking these little issues that are designed and checked by people who know that it will inflame certain people, and it becomes class warfare. Leadership is not about, Lanny, going forward and saying, let's pick on the rich people. That's the way that's a political statement. That's not a real serious effort to get at what is causing our debt problems in this country, and I'm sorry. I'll now let you respond.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm glad we agree on something. Let's start with corporate tax. Oil companies are actually more than a few $1 billion, and let's not forget about all the tax subsidies for people who send their businesses abroad and aren't taxed. You could probably get hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's what Vice President Biden is trying to do by closing up those loopholes. It's not. In fact, it's corporate welfare. It's not tax warfare. But look, 80% of the American people can't be saying class warfare. They're talking about equity. I think we do have to cut spending. I've been in favor of the Simpson-Bowles Commission, but you can't ask people to sacrifice a lot of the programs that they're benefiting from, including Michelle Bachmann's got to start to sacrifice her farm subsidy. She seems to hate federal government welfare unless it's going to her farm, right? So let's have an even-handed approach, not class warfare, but everybody's got to sacrifice.
Well, those big oil companies, it's not necessarily a subsidy. Essentially what it is giving them a tax break for when they look for new pockets of oil. I mean, that's what...
You know that oil companies are making hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars and don't need a tax break to explore for oil. Oil is now at record levels. If oil companies were hurting, then of course. But you know perfectly well that that's not.
All right, but you also know perfectly well that businesses essentially don't pay taxes. The consumer pays taxes. They'll just pass it on to me and you down the road.
I have a great idea. Let's take away all corporate taxes. Let's subsidize big corporations, and let's ask the middle class to sacrifice in order to do something about the deficit. Do you think that? Are you in favor of 10% or 20% of the American people? Overwhelming 80%. Look at any public opinion poll on this question, and you'll find you're in the 20% minority. That means independents, that means Democrats, that means moderate Republicans. So you have to at least concede you're in a sliver of a minority by arguing that. Is it democracy? Is it not a democracy?
Well, here's how I feel, though, Lanny. I feel that you could lower the corporate tax rate and then get rid of all kinds of, what if you want to call them a subsidy or a tax credit or whatever. It's a flat rate for businesses, period, end of story. That's the bottom line. But lower it. It needs to be lower than what it is right now.
Well, Simpson-Bowles actually suggests that if we lower tax rates and get rid of the subsidies, including, by the way, a limit on interest on mortgage deductions, people who are wealthier should not have 100% interest deductions if they don't need it. We're going to have to find a way to all suffer some pain. I think the middle class are going to have to suffer some pain, but I think that people in upper income brackets such as myself should be paying more, and that's the only way we're going to do something.
Write the check, Lanny. Yeah. Write the check.
Two things. First of all, I think
I'm happy to write the check. I hope you guys join me.
Well, I mean, you can do it right now. You can send it away, but right, I think Lanny,
in Washington D.C. area, everybody $100. The animal shelters need your help.
Hey, a foster kitten parent. So,
Good.
Two things. I think liberals need to be careful about this tax subsidy attacking if they don't want all these alleged green jobs to go away, which are almost entirely created with tax subsidies. That's a side note. But I wanted to ask you, if the president is so firmly on the side of what everyday Americans believe, if what 80% of Americans are totally behind him on this message, why are his disapproval numbers on handling the deficit so bad?
Well, first of all, we have high unemployment. It has not gone down. The stimulus package did not work as well as it should have, and President Obama is going to be held accountable if that unemployment rate goes down. He's proposed a number of new programs that would create new jobs, but I do agree that the economy has not rebounded the way it should. We can't blame Bush anymore. And President Obama is going to be held accountable. And I also completely agree with you that liberals have their special programs that are using credit cards, not paying from current revenues. And we've got to stop, too. The one thing I'd like to say is that I'm pretty across the board and even-handed, and that's why I support Simpson-Bowles. It's a spreading of the pain across the population. The only person that seems to hate federal subsidies except for her own farm is Michelle Bachmann.
Yeah, that isn't going to be a liability for her. She does have some issues.
I said that before, didn't I?
Yeah, I think
you mentioned that.
But Lanny, do you honestly believe that the way to solve a soft economy where people, look, we could be on the bubble here before long. The signs are blinking yellow and red, and you really believe that that what we should do in that economic environment is raise taxes?
Yes, but we also have to invest and spend wisely in places that create jobs. But of course, the markets are not going to be willing to invest in their plans, in new jobs, in expansion, if they're looking at what might be a default of the federal government on paying its obligations, and we have $14 trillion worth of debt. So you're right, we face a dilemma, but we can't keep spending money with a credit card on the excuse that we're in a bad economy. Bill Clinton, remember, in 1993, coming out of a recession, proposed $250 billion of increased taxes and $250 billion in cuts in revenue, in cuts in spending. And then not one Republican, not one, supported that legislation. It was passed in the House by one vote. And you know what happened to the economy in the late 90s with help from Republicans.
Yeah, with also help from a .com that ultimately blew apart as well.
If there weren't a rebound in the economy in the late 90s, you would have blamed Clinton. But the fact there was a rebound, you don't give him credit for that gutsy move that he ended up with a $300 billion surplus.
Well,
8 years later,
those numbers are
later, we now have $14 trillion.
We got to run, but thank you, Lanny. Those numbers are a little skewed, but we'll talk about that down the road. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week.
It's not the worst thing you ever said about me.
Yes, that's right. All right, Lanny says.
Thanks,
Lanny and the president say you got to raise taxes in order to get the fiscal house in order. Are they right, or are they completely off the reservation? 1-888-630-9625.